The first discussion topic on today's Peace and Prosperity is North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's intention behind a horseback ride up Mount Baekdu. North Korean leaders have often visited Mount Baekdu, the sacred mountain in the regime, ahead of major political decisions. North Korean state media released a series of photos on October 16th showing Kim riding a white horse to the snowy mountain.
또다시 세상에 놀고 우리 혁명이 한 걸음 전진될 웅대한 작전이 펼쳐질 것이라는 확신을 받아 안으며 끓어오르는 감격과 환희를 누르지 못했습니다.
Kim also visited a number of economic sites in the country. The young leader said his people's pain has turned into their anger, calling for greater self-reliance in the face of sanctions. There has been little development since the breakdown of working-level talks between North Korea and the U.S. in Stockholm. What major announcement could be coming from Kim? Today's second discussion topic is the political troubles facing U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping, and how they could affect future nuclear negotiations. As poll numbers continue to show growing support for impeaching Trump, he has come under even more fire after deciding to pull U.S. troops out of Syria. During a recent cabinet meeting, Trump talked about North Korea for the first time since the breakdown of the Stockholm talks, once again touting his personal relationship with Kim and progress with North Korea.
If somebody else became president with that same mindset that they had, you'd right now be in a big war with North Korea. You don't hear too much about it. Could happen.
President Xi is also embroiled in several domestic challenges, including China's economic slowdown and Hong Kong pro-democracy protests. A pile of political issues have put both leaders' political standing in jeopardy. How will these leadership crises in Washington and Beijing affect Korean Peninsula affairs? To shed light on these latest developments, our host, Bong Young-shi, Research Fellow at Yonsei University's Institute for North Korean Studies, is joined by Park Won-gon, Professor of International Studies at Handong Global University. To broaden the perspective, we also connect with guest experts on Skype, including Joshua Pollack, Senior Research Associate at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterey, and Peter Kuznick, Professor at American University.
Hello and welcome to our program. On this week's Peace and Prosperity, we'll examine three leaderships in crisis. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un rode a white horse up Mount Baekdu. U.S. President Donald Trump faces a political crisis at home as impeachment battle heats up. On the other hand, Chinese President Xi Jinping has come under criticism for his handling of trade disputes with the United States and Hong Kong protests. Today, we'll examine these three leaderships at crossroads and what it could mean for future nuclear talks. We have Professor Park Won-gon of Handong Global University, who's an expert on the leaderships and foreign policy in Northeast Asia. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
My first question goes to you is, Chairman Kim Jong-un riding a white horse, which I believe is not the first time, right? What it means to North Korea's next move or inter-Korean relationships, as well as the future nuclear negotiation between Washington and Pyongyang?
Important thing is that Kim Jong-un ride a horse and to go to Mountain Baekdu, which is a very sacred mountain for North Korea. Usually he visit there, if I remember correctly, at least twice before he make a very important decision. In the year 2017, Kim Jong-un visited Mountain Baekdu just right after North Korea launched the ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missiles. And also a few weeks before, he made a speech in 2018, and he also visited Mountain Baekdu. So usually when he made a very important decisions, he used to go to the Baekdu Mountain. So this time, the North Korean news media say that he is thinking about this, some kind of a great operation.
Great operation.
Yes, we don't know exactly what that is, but it's kind of related to some important decision. We all know that in Sweden and also in the last February, Hanoi, all this failure of this negotiation and with the United States. So many people expect that Kim Jong-un will have some kind of alternative or new way or new path. So this time, I think he shows his willingness to can have some kind of a new way to deal with the United States if the United States does not come up with what North Korea has wanted.
That's a very interesting point because Chairman Kim has been making a lot of public appearances, like on-spot inspection tours, and the sites has been mostly very important industrial and economic sites. At the same time, his picture of riding a white horse to the Mountain Baekdu is covered in the North Korean media with the title that the North Korean people and the leadership are in anger toward the United States for its hostile policy. What do they mean?
First, definitely, Chairman Kim Jong-un wanted to show his very decisive resolution against United States, especially United States sanction. The North Korea has wanted to lift up sanctions since the last February, and this also Swedish. The negotiation, but the United States kind of refused to kind of lift up the sanction unless North Korea is getting started to any meaningful nuclear denuclearization steps.
Right.
So this time, the Chairman Kim Jong-un wanted to convey some kind of message to their own people. It will take time. Because at this moment, I think North Korean people has a very high expectation. Especially last year, their supreme leader met President Trump of the United States, President, also the South Korean President Moon Jae-in several times. So they kind of expectation that there might be sanction relief, which means that...
That's before the Hanoi summit meeting,
Yes,
right?
before the Hanoi summit. So that's the ordinary North Korean people kind of expectation that their life is getting better. But since 2019, there is no progress at all. So it's still very heavy sanction put on their life.
I see. Now we'll hear observation from the United States on this matter. Joining us on the line is Joshua Pollack, Senior Research Associate at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies and Monterey. Hello, Mr. Pollack.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has been urging self-reliance in recent weeks instead of focusing on resuming talks with the United States. What could be his intention behind this?
I think that Kim Jong-un is increasingly of the view that sanctions relief will not be forthcoming in the foreseeable future. Whatever his intentions are, he intends to proceed without the benefit of sanctions relief. And that may create some uncomfortable moments for the rest of the world.
You see. It seems that Pyongyang is sending a message to Washington that it wants to have the sanctions lifted, at least partially, before re-engaging in nuclear talks. Do you think there is a chance that Washington may accept this demand, showing some strategic flexibility?
You never know with Donald Trump as president what Washington will or won't accept. He has taken a surprisingly hard line since the conclusion of the Singapore summit. And many observers had suspected that this represented the influence of his advisors, particularly John Bolton. Now that Bolton is gone, perhaps there is more room for a change of position, but there is no particular indication of a rethink yet.
Mr. Pollack, are there any concerns with the United States that North Korea may turn to China or Russia to get the economic sanction lifted?
Well, they already have. China and Russia are permanent members of the Security Council, and their votes would be needed. Kim Jong-un has been courting both of those countries, particularly the Chinese. In the meantime, he is probably looking for ways to minimize the effects of the sanctions because America's consent is also needed. Like Russia and China, America has a veto in the Security Council and can keep the sanctions in place, on paper at least, for as long as it wishes. The question then is how strongly will they be enforced?
Right. There was Senior Research Associate Joshua Pollack. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks again for having me on.
I'd like to get your feedback on, Mr. Pollack's analysis in conjunction with a recent report that Kim Jong-un has ordered his people to dismantle the facility in Mount Baekdu tour site built by South Korean companies, saying that Mount Baekdu totally belongs to us. It's not to be shared between the two Koreas. And he even criticized his father's decision to open up the joint economic cooperation programs with South Korea. That's very unusual, right?
Yeah, right.
So when you combine all this, what do you see? What do you see Chairman Kim Jong-un must be thinking as a next move?
I think he's showing his frustration.
Frustration.
Yeah, we are talking about, also Mr. Pollack mentioned correctly, I totally agree with that. North Korea has put the emphasis on the sanction relief. Since 2017, they have a very heavy sanction, but still there is no kind of expectation that the sanction will be lifted sooner or later. Donald Trump keep mentioning that sanction is very important, it will last until the final complete denuclearization of North Korea. And also, this, in that sense, the Kumgang Mountain tour is very important. It's one of the ways that North Korea can get the hard currency from the tourists, mainly from South Korea. But since last year, you remember that Pyongyang Declaration, September, it included that kind of opening of the Kumgang Mountain tour and the Kaesong Industrial Complex. Of course, there are some preconditions, but North Korea kept mentioning and insisting that South Korea should come up with this kind of promise, and no matter what kind of opposition, especially by the United States. So it's kind of reflect his frustration.
But if South Koreans are participating in the Mount Baekdu tour program, would it be in violation of United Nations Security Council resolutions?
Kumgang Mountain tour itself, I mean the Mount tourism itself is not the violation of the United Nations Security Council's sanction. But the problem is, in order to implement, in order to do these tours, for example, we should have some transportation from South Korea to North, including bus or the ships. It have to be exempt from the United Nations Security Council sanctions. So it's practically impossible without any kind of a meaningful step by the North Korea so that we can have some kind of sanction relief. Then we have the real meaning of tourism.
It's all connected and complicated.
Yes.
Well, let's get into the mindset of Chairman Kim Jong-un. He declared in 2016 the ambitious 5-year economic plan, and time flies, and we are nearing the end of the 5-year economic plan of North Korea. And it seems like North Korean leadership has not really achieved much. What kind of a response or strategy Chairman Kim Jong-un and his aides are likely going to take?
Well, he mentioned several times, and also North Korean news media has expressed the so-called new way or new path. But many people kind of make a speculation what kind of a new way and path North Korea has. There are at least 3 different opinions. First, they are going to get back more aggressive sanction bursting. Because we are talking about the sanction. Sanction is very heavily imposed on the North Korea. So they are, I don't know exactly what kind of way, but they are totally denied all sanctions and trying to get over the sanction. And that's the first option. The second option is to have a more active engagement with Russia and China. For example, North Korea can do this kind of a denuclearization measure with Russia and China, not the United States. So that could be their second option. And third option is most popular one, including me. They are going to get back to year 2017, which means that there are possibility, the resumption of the testing of ICBMs and also the possibility the nuclear weapons. So that could be, if they really, doing this kind of the test, it will bring Korean parents once again under the very huge tension.
Yeah, that doesn't bode well for the peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula, especially after we mentioned Chairman Kim Jong-un might be really desperate, like ordering dismantlement of the facilities in Mount Baekdu site.
The problem is, I don't think North Korea can choose to have a testing again. Because
that's good news.
Yeah, because if they did, we all know that what Trump's reaction is going to be. Because Trump, he doesn't bother to change his policy rapidly. If North Korea is cross so-called red line.
Red line.
And then the Trump will resume the so-called massive pressure campaign against North Korea.
I see. Chairman Kim is not the only one standing at the crossroads. So are the leaders of the United States and China, who have found themselves in a pile of political and economic issues. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has talked about North Korea for the first time since the breakdown of the working level talks with the North Koreans in Stockholm. Here's a short clip.
U.S. President Donald Trump broke his silence on North Korea in a cabinet meeting on October 21st, for the first time since the breakdown of working-level talks with the North over 2 weeks ago.
If somebody else became president with that same mindset that they had, you'd right now be in a big war with North Korea. You don't hear too much about it. Could happen.
Trump claimed that former President Barack Obama made unsuccessful attempts to call North Korea's leader, while emphasizing that his relationship with Kim was still good.
But the man on the other side, the gentleman on the other side, did not take his call. Okay? Lack of respect. But he takes my call.
He added, a lot of things are going on with North Korea and speculated there could be a major rebuild at a certain point. Watchers say Trump once again highlighted his North Korea policy as an achievement, as polls show increasing support for his impeachment. A Gallup poll released on October 16th has found that 52% of Americans support impeaching and removing Trump from office, while 46% disagree. Following the president's decision to withdraw U.S. forces from Syria, even some Republicans turned their backs on him, which could damage his re-election prospects. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping too faces a raft of political challenges ahead of the fourth plenary session of the 19th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China. China's economy in the third quarter grew at 6%, the lowest growth since 1992, when China began publishing its growth data. Xi's leadership has also been put to test by the ongoing Hong Kong protests, which began in June. It remains to be seen how Trump and Xi will address the mounting leadership challenges at home.
First of all, we would all agree that President Trump is a very interesting character, to say the least. And the recent cabinet meeting, he touted his achievement, saying that, well, my predecessor tried to call Chairman Kim Jong-un 11 times, but the call did not get picked up. But I can call him anytime, right? He respects me, and I respect him. But at the same time, he also warns that without me, the United States and North Korea would have been in a war. So what kind of message is he willing to deliver to Pyongyang?
You are right. President Trump is a very unconventional president. we haven't had a chance to see this kind of president. But he kind of delivered this message continuously. I mean, very two different messages, but he keep mentioning that. First one is that he wanted to talk. He wanted to talk with especially Chairman Kim Jong-un. He does not exclude the third summit between United States and North Korea. But at the same time, he put the pressure on North Korea that in order to have a summit, North Korea should come up with some kind of meaningful denuclearization steps, measures. So this is kind of a combined way to give us some conciliatory gesture at the same time, put the pressure on North Korea.
Don't you think both President Trump and President Xi Jinping of China in political crisis would be a huge roadblock to North Korea coming to talk and negotiate?
Well, I'm not sure it is really the huge roadblock or not, but it's definitely make some kind of influence, impact on the denuclearization talk. From the Chinese perspective, Xi Jinping, he has a very difficult time with the United States, the relationship in general. So at the same, for that purpose, we all know that China using North Korean, so-called North Korean card. North Korea is one of the important assets for China vis-a-vis the relationship with the United States. And the North Korea, China has been showing several times their influence over the North Korea. So Xi Jinping keeps showing that he has a kind of make an impact on North Korea's the policy. And at the same time, President Trump, he's right now domestically in a very difficult position. We just watched that one. And the House of the Representatives, the impeachment inquiries already started, and it will last for time being.
Right.
So in that sense, Trump is not going to make any kind of conciliatory or the easy kind of deal with North Korea. We already experienced it last February in Hanoi. At the time, the Michael Cohen, he's the personal attorney in the hearing at the U.S. Congress, he said that after 1 month, President Trump said it might impact on my decision to walk out of this Hanoi the negotiation table. So in that sense, in Washington, we all know that no deal is better than bad deal. So I think this kind of the circumstances make an impact on the Donald Trump's decision, which means that he does not want to do any kind of easy deal or agreement with North Korea.
Let's get a U.S. expert's take on the political challenges facing President Trump and Xi Jinping. We have on the line Peter Kuznick, professor at American University. Welcome to our program, Professor.
Thanks for having me today.
Okay. A new poll conducted has found that 54% of Americans support the impeachment inquiry of President Trump. Even Republicans are now criticizing his southern Syria withdrawal decision. This isn't the first time we remember the impeachment controversy erupted for President Trump, but could this be the biggest political crisis of Trump's career?
Okay, this is definitely the biggest crisis of the Trump presidency. You have to remember that Trump was a divisive figure from the beginning. People were out in the streets protesting his presidency from his first day in office, even before he took office. And so the latest polling, and the numbers keep going up, is that a majority, clear majority of Americans want to see the impeachment inquiry, and a growing number of Americans would like to see him convicted and thrown out of office. That's an extreme step in American politics. Has that ever really happened? No. It almost happened with Andrew Johnson. It would have happened with Richard Nixon. It didn't happen with Bill Clinton, even though they brought the charges against him. And we don't know what's going to happen with Donald Trump.
Professor Kuznick, skeptics in the United States say that North Korea will never give up its nuclear weapon. What is President Trump thinking right now? Do you think that he is still committed to North Korea's denuclearization?
And he has not had a single foreign policy victory or success. What he's desperate for is a foreign policy victory. It's not happening in Iran. It's not happening in Ukraine. It's not happening anywhere. But he thinks he has the possibility of achieving this with North Korea. It would be great. We'd all love to see it happen. And the fact that we've made some progress and we're talking is a good thing. But the real credit for that goes to Moon Jae-in. When Moon Jae-in reached out to North Korea, when Donald Trump was saying, don't be a fool, don't waste your time, don't bother talking to them, Moon Jae-in ignored Trump and reached out to North Korea. Moon Jae-in, and then the North Koreans responded. They sent the delegation to the United Nations, to the Olympics. The North Koreans and South Koreans marched together. They fielded a women's hockey team, ice hockey team. This was great, and we were making progress. When Trump got involved, the United States was demanding all or nothing denuclearization, which is totally unrealistic. And Trump does not have the kind of finesse or the kind of fine-tuning to understand the nuances of the situation. Stephen Biegun apparently does, but he has not been given the authority to do any real negotiating. So things have fallen apart. We've made no progress at this point, except that we're talking. And it's great that we're talking instead of firing missiles, instead of making threats, instead of exchanging insults. Now Trump and Kim Jong-un are exchanging love letters. Okay, I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, but at least it's ridiculous in a better direction than the threat of war.
Okay. That was Professor Peter Kuznick from American University. Thank you so much for giving us a very thorough analysis.
Ian, it's been a pleasure to be on with you today, and I look forward to speaking again.
Right, definitely. Any general take on Peter Kuznick's remark?
Well, he raised several interesting points, but most important thing is that President Trump's administration, especially foreign policy, is not right now is very difficult. I mean, he said a very kind of word that like irresponsibility, impulsive decision that has been made by President Trump. And so we are not sure at this moment what kind of a policy did President Trump pursue, especially about the North Korean denuclearization. But it is true that the circumstance, he's talking about Syrian cases and domestic impeachment, all those things can make an impact or some kind of influence over the North Korean policy.
This is my last question to you, which is whether Chairman Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump are playing kind of a waiting game. That United States says that we want to talk, but there has not been really talking. There's a framework of dialogue, but there has not been any talk between the two sides. And Kim Jong-un is talking about new ways that must be made by the United States, and he suggested some provocations, but he stopped short of actually crossing the red line. So, are you thinking that the leaders might be just playing a waiting or holding game?
Well, from the North Korean perspective, I don't think the time is on their side, because we all know that North Korea has experienced the minus growth, minus 3.5% of economic growth in year 2017, and last year the minus 4.1, and still we have a very strong sanction in place. So it's going to be a very difficult time, especially at the end of this year. Many people assume that. So I don't think they can have any luxurious to have another plan to have a series of provocation. The most important thing is that they should get some kind of sanction relief. From the United States, I think President Trump, although the Professor Kuznick mentioned interesting point that President Trump wanted to achieve some kind of the foreign policy, victory. But at the same time, we all know that Trump can easily change his position. So at the minimum, what he wants, especially in terms of North Korean policy, is to just manage North Korea. That means keep continuing some kind of talk or the phase of the negotiation and dialogue. And the maximum, of course, he want to make really meaningful the solution for the denuclearization of North Korea.
I see. Right, as always, thank you so much for your eloquent explanations and thorough insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. North Korea has yet to resume talks with the U.S. or launch provocations, and the whole world is closely watching how the situation evolves. And that is all we have for you today. We'll be back next week with the latest updates. Thanks for watching.